Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Brigadier and his ancestors as he defends the Earth in episode 363. And if you speak Welsh, we apologize now. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
Enjoying my new year.
Yeah, Happy New Year,
Happy
everyone.
New Year.
Did you guys have fun celebrating New Year's?
We did. I just hung out with the family and played games and had a little wine and toasted the New Year at midnight. It was a lot of fun.
Nice. What'd you do, Sean?
We did kind of much the same. We had just a very low-key, some friends over and played some Rock Band and played some... I was introduced to Settlers of Catan.
Oh, finally.
Yeah, which is I like that one.
Yeah.
I'll put that on my wish list.
It's fun.
And then we played... I know it as Presidents and Peons, which is the probably more PC version of what we actually wound up playing, which is a card game, and some drinking went on with that.
We know.
Yeah, I kind of owe everybody an apology because apparently I'm a lightweight and my 3 mixed drinks, which were not very strong and I nursed over the course of probably about 8 hours, was enough to put me in the tank the next day. So, yeah, just kind of
We did watch some movies.
What'd you watch?
We watched Churchill. That's got Brian Cox as Winston. It was really good. I also watched The Mummy, the remake.
The
What'd
Tom
you
Cruise
think?
one.
It was okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't good, but it wasn't bad. It could have been better, even with the same elements, if they had written it differently. And then we watched Despicable Me 3.
That was a cute one.
Yeah, it was cute.
We went out and saw Jumanji.
How was that?
That was a lot of fun.
Anything else?
No, that was about it.
All right. Well, we don't have any news or feedback this week, so we'll go ahead and move on to our reviews.
HAVOC Files 3. What are we at?
4.
I will happily talk about 3 some more if you want. There's one really, really good story in 3.
Loskin 2.
No, not that one. Although that one's not too bad.
Strange Goings
Could use
On.
a stronger ending.
Could have used an ending.
I could have used an ending.
It's
Andy.
getting one, to be fair. It's getting one, to be fair.
Not to call out the author, Andy.
He's making a novella. What more can you want?
Now.
It's soon.
Not
I
have to
think
wait.
April, right, is when they're shooting for us? I
think
remember
so.
that right?
Yeah.
So maybe you don't understand how it works over here in America, buddy. We're all about the instant gratification.
Yeah.
We don't want to wait for these things. I don't want to enjoy the journey. I just want to get to the end. In fact, I might just read the last page first when it comes in.
Just cuz.
Just 'cause. Just out of spite. Sorry, go ahead. I'm done.
HAVOC Files 4. Strange Goings On in a small English village. Training for new members of the 5th Operational Corps. And the 2 brigadiers meeting up to take on the most notorious aliens in the galaxy. Lethbridge-Stewart encounters a unicorn in Linfield. And Travers and Bill Bishop go on their first official dates. Just some of the strange tales that make up HAVOC 4. Which features 5 brand new short stories, including one by Wink Taylor, who has written for both Sooty and Basil and the Brush. Sooty and Basil the Brush. Plus 4 stories previously only available in digital format, including one by popular author Nick Walters.
Woohoo!
That's our new rating system. We've gone away from bump dum dum.
So
We've gone to woohoo. No, we haven't.
Oh, I liked it.
Well, yeah, it's certainly better than dun dun dun, I suppose.
Dun, dun, dun.
Well, there are some of these that we have obviously reviewed, so we'll step through the book and do the ones we haven't. The Contented Mind.
By Wink Taylor.
Yes.
I love that name, Wink.
I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It's nice to see the Brig having after effects from the traumatic events of the London events and Forgotten Son.
Yeah, this is the one where he keeps seeing the Spectre right
He
after.
pretty much is dealing with a little bit of PTSD.
After Pendleton? Is that his name?
Yes.
After his death.
Old Spence.
Yeah. Yeah, I quite liked it too. It took me a little while even though I had read that it takes place right before the Forgotten Son. It took me a little bit
After, right?
That's
I'm
during
sorry,
the epilogue.
after.
Yeah.
Epilogue of even though it still took me a little bit because I've been so used to, from our perspective, present day Brigadier, that sometimes when you do these short stories, you have to realize, okay, well, we've either jumped forward in time or we've jumped back in time,
And then rack your brain to try to remember what happened. in
Yeah,
Forgotten Son.
exactly.
That was the biggest challenge, was casting my mind back and going, okay, we were here, and this happened. Okay, yeah. But it took me probably, I was midway through the story going, oh, okay, yeah, all right. It's just...
I kind of felt that the author, Wink Taylor, I was just going to say Wink Taylor because I like the name Wink. I thought he did a good job, though, kind of like hand-holding you through the memories so that you could kind of help you recall a lot of what had happened in that. But yeah, no, it was, I really quite enjoyed this one. Not being able to, starting to find the words at the eulogy, and then kind of losing it a bit, but then Lethbridge-Stewart really feeling like he kind of mucked the whole thing up, only to get that nice little message from Pemberton's widow afterwards, which I thought was really cool, and then the tie back to the book that he was referring to that he had given him, or had shown him.
I like the fact that, kind of like the Christmas story that we read, The Case of the Missing Fairy, this is one of the ones where there really isn't an alien influence. It's just kind of dealing with what's happening in life, and he's just remembering the alien influence. Yet, it still leaves it open enough that it could have been the intelligence trying to influence him somehow. So it's kind of, it does both at the same time, I thought, which I really liked.
I can see that. I didn't think that. I think that at the time, but I can see that.
I can see it. I didn't think it either. I just thought it was, just kind of cool. So frequently in television or movies, you don't get the wrap up.
Yeah.
It's like, and then we save the world. What happens the next day? Nothing. That's the end. We save the world. And so this was kind of no, here's the next day. Here's the next couple of days. Here's the cleanup.
Especially when there's losses to cope with.
Then we get the 80s comedy drama freeze frame at the end.
In a way, it was too nice, too, to get in a kind of weird way I felt like I know Old Spence better now.
Yeah.
I think so too,
he's kind of been very central and yet so far removed from the action of the books. But he's obviously a very important figure in the Briggs life. And so it was kind of nice to get some more background information on him as well.
It's true.
And we go back to days of Sally and the Briggs still together, which is a bit awkward. No.
That was the most jarring and the most definitive. Okay, now I know where I'm at.
Yeah. Certainly helps you put your thumb on it.
Sally went and did the what? Oh, okay.
Still together.
Yep. Anything else on the Contented
I don't
Mind?
think so. I think it was a rather short story too. There's not a lot going on.
Less than 20 pages.
Yeah.
So.
Next one in the book is Run by Bomb by Nick Walters, which we have reviewed on this show.
Yes.
So then we move on.
United in Blood. Who wrote that one, Glenn?
That one was written by Mark Jones, and it's set shortly before the novel The Night of the Intelligence. Sean, you want to start?
I don't think I read this one. I think I skipped this one thinking we had already reviewed it. Have we not?
No, we hadn't reviewed this
hadn't.
one.
Oh. This was one that...
I didn't read it. Oops.
This is the one.
Well, good. I have more book to read. Now I'm excited.
This is the one, just for memory recall, this is the one where he's visiting an old friend that owns the bar.
Yes.
And there's fights have been happening at the bar, and it's kind of turned people off.
Oh, wait. No, I did read this.
Although you get the impression sort of that, well, you don't get the impression, you find out later that the tension in fights are happening because other places as well.
Flower.
Right. But yeah, this is the plant. Okay.
The plant,
no, I did read this one. Okay. Yeah, I liked this one.
And he goes to the town historian and buys him a few drinks in order to get some.
Yeah.
Which I think was a clever way to kind of convey some of that backstory not only to fill Lethbridge-Stewart in on what has transpired in this town in the past, but also to inform the reader on what the background of this, fill in the backstory.
Well, and it's a great use of location because it's very much a pub thing that there's that guy that would be hanging out who is the local authority on
and
everything,
has a favorite beverage,
as opposed to the info dump that could come from the friend who runs the bar, or
Right.
and it's like, oh no, so it's not necessarily that important, but it's a little bit of world building. It's a nice little piece of the puzzle that just kind of sits in, and it really adds that detail layer. And as they say, the devil's in the details. It just kind of goes, oh, okay.
Literally.
And it's nice that, yeah, well, in this case too. It's also nice that he then shows up later at the
football game.
The pitch.
I was going to say soccer. And
Was it rugby or was it football? I think it was rugby.
Football.
Oh, was it football? Okay, that was
Pretty sure it was football. It was kids football.
at the soccer match.
That's right.
And
Offend every British.
we haven't even got to the Welsh yet.
Yeah, this is just wait.
Well, that'll offend the Welsh.
No, just that he became then this extra character that was able to run around and do things.
I felt bad for him too when the guy pushes
Yeah,
him
no,
not
wow,
once
yeah.
but twice.
Yeah.
And he's got, I mean, come on, Basil Archer.
What a great name.
Could there be a more British sounding fellow?
These stories tend to be pretty common, I think, with the short stories, and they always make me chuckle. Where it starts off of the Brigadier on the weekend.
Yeah.
I always go, uh-oh, something's not going to go right.
One of these days we're going to get a short story where the Brigadier actually gets a
week,
day off or a
holiday.
vacation or holiday or something.
We're just going to be waiting for something to happen and nothing's going to.
Can you imagine the review? And then on page 27, he does laundry, and it's like, where is the where's the ghost? Where's the haunting? Where's the alien? No, he just
has a weekend.
the brig has a weekend.
A few days off.
He went on holiday to Spain.
I worried starting this that there was something about the pub that was going to be nefarious.
Oh.
And then when that kind of spreads out, and obviously the people on the pitch, the guys on the pitch that have the red hands, and the boys at the pond, Lethbridge-Stewart puts that together when they're being a bit aggressive as well, and when they're walking away. And then every time the Brigadier would go sneak out, and I was like, okay. Part of me feels like he snuck into the compound, and part of me thinks, okay, it's necessary to drive the plot that the Brigadier would investigate something like this to find the evidence that he needs. But how many laws can you actually break? Because he does that later again, I think, in another story.
Breaking and entering.
I think, I guess, you have to have some leeway for bending the rules a bit, breaking the rules a little bit, the laws a little bit in order to get the information that you need. But,
The other one's
that's in the back of my mind every time that happens.
the other one I think is a little looser than this one because it's at a friend's house and it was unlocked.
Yeah,
But,
agree.
But
Agreed.
this one is like, wow,
No,
you're just going to like
literally
hop a
scale
fence and just
Well, and then
on nothing.
and then the one guard guy or whoever it was that works there that starts to attack him, and then he's fine and walks off. I thought, and it had me in that moment of, oh gosh, how's the Brigadier going to get out of this?
It's going to be assault now.
Oh, he just forgot.
Yeah.
He just forgets and walks off, and I was like, okay.
I like
this. Go ahead.
I like the idea of the fact that what's behind it all is this meteorite and the almost Seeds of Doom type story.
That's what it made me feel like.
Yeah.
Mostly was kind of not really a rehash, but kind of it had echoes of Seeds of Doom.
Variations on a theme. And then the fact that they're tweaking and making it a hybrid plant, so it kind of takes it beyond Seeds of Doom and its big threat of spreading out.
I think the wrap up of this one was, I think, the letdown for me. We had this great lead up and this kind of action packed following this lorry to get to this place to stop the spread of it because it's going to this flower show market thing, and then everything's just kind of okay. We've wrapped it up and tie everything up in a little bowl. Yeah, and that was a bit.
it felt a bit like we'd written too much.
Yeah,
and so now it's like, okay, we got to hurry up and wrap this up because we've exceeded our page limit. And so then we save the world. I mean, that's literally how this one kind of comes across. It was like, and there was some paperwork, and we'll find out what happens later.
It's another one of those short stories, and I can't remember the one we talked about before that really felt like this one could have been fleshed out into a longer novel.
I was just about to say that. At least a novella.
All of this story could have been fleshed out longer. And so I quite enjoyed the ride, but it just wraps up really quick at the end.
I want to go back real quick to what I think it's funny you mentioned the pub. I wonder how much of this...
Why is it funny that I mentioned the pub?
that you were thinking that something nefarious was happening. And I wonder how much of this is from Nicholas Courtney. Because Nicholas Courtney certainly was no stranger to pubs. That was, if he wasn't on set, he was in a pub. That's kind of every documentary and every behind-the-scenes featurette has always talked about. He would go and have a pint and regale everybody with stories, and that's kind of something that has seeped into the character of the Brigadier, I think. And so anytime there's a pub that shows up, I kind of go the opposite direction. I don't think the pub's nefarious because I think the pub is a safe place. He's always setting up the command post in the pub. He's always...
Especially since Forgotten Son.
Yeah, I mean, there's just... And the one that really did scare me was the Flaming Soldier, when all of a sudden one of the tables bursts into flames in the pub. And I was like, no, the pubs are safe. You're not allowed to do that. that's a no-no. But I just wonder how much of that is instinctual, subconscious writing from the Nicholas Courtney perspective of who he played the Brig as. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's probably the case, but I see what you're saying.
I just... it may not be, but I wonder if there's a hive mind kind of at work, that because Nicholas Courtney was known for that, well, obviously the Brig is known for that, and so that's why we continually get pub scenes where he's hanging out in the pub. And
I think it's because pubs are pretty common.
I think that's probably
is. And it's very
especially
much
in the
line with
1960s. That was such part. Yeah. That was so much part. I mean, I think it still is, but back then it was so much in the culture.
And it's very much part of who he is as a character.
Well, he's also got a lot of friends that own pubs, obviously.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's what you do in England. You retire from the army and start a pub.
Or teach maths.
Yes.
See, I think he missed his calling.
Why didn't he? Yeah, why didn't he just open a pub somewhere?
I still don't buy him as a math
Maybe
teacher.
He did. We don't know what he did after math.
Oh!
What was he doing
Sean's
in Sarah
formulating his next short story.
What was he doing in Sarah Jane Adventures? He was fully retired.
He was fully retired at that point.
Yeah.
So,
but still being called away to Peru for consulting gigs.
Well, even...
Worked for Benton. Spoilers.
Even the Hellfire Club is kind of... At least a
okay, now I want
alcoholic boy, the Brigadier sure does gravitate to pubs. Not just in the Lethbridge-Stewart stuff.
Everywhere.
Now I totally want to do an alternate. Andy, here's your new thing. This is a freebie. I want a whole alternate universe unit story set where the entire cast of Unit is basically doing Cheers. And that way you can have Liz and Joe and Benton and Mike,
Yates.
and they can all work for the Brig at the pub.
All right.
I'd pay money to watch that show. More importantly, I'd pay money to read those books. So There you go. That's a freebie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just struck me as funny that you went the pub's bad. I was like, no, the pub's never bad.
I think my only complaints about this story is the fact that I think it has a grand scale formula that I think could have been fleshed out in a longer form, and I think that it just abruptly ends. But overall, it's a pretty good read. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would agree.
And we've got Cruel Oil next, but we have already...
That's what we've already read.
Harry... is it Draper or Draper?
I've been saying Draper.
Harry Draper. Again, we did review that just a few months back, as a matter of fact. So the next one, Keith?
The next one is... I'm trying to pull it up too. All the King's Men by Allison Leeds.
Yes. And this story is set shortly before the novella, The Flaming Soldier.
Yes.
Which we just read. Keith, you want to start this one off?
This one... kind of the same vein of the last one, the Brigadier on vacation and starts investigating. But I like the fact that this was... It was a bit more accidental. That he for most of the story, he's along for the ride.
He really is, yeah.
And then finally kind of gets okay, I better go look into this. And then once he does, it kind of moves along pretty quickly. Is over. It's a really fast-paced book.
It is fast-paced.
Short.
But doesn't feel like it wraps up immediately.
No, it doesn't.
Even though unit does sweep in and clean things up, or the fifth.
But there's really no other way to resolve that story.
No, there's really not.
No.
I think it's handled well too, because obviously he's a bit distraught over his friend. I mean, this is a life-changing event for him. I mean, finding out that your newlywed wife is this, nefarious person who has been breeding unicorn babies and killing people basically every time it got uncovered.
So I got the impression that she didn't want the guy to kill the first dude, and things have kind of just like he went too far to protect him, and the first person that they killed wasn't meant to be killed, and then things kind of just escalated.
Do you think that's what drove her mad, though? Because I mean, I got the impression that she was kind of off the rails there towards the end, even though she hit it very well from her husband and Brigadier.
She was very much stark raving bonkers, but not in the
I'm going to kill everyone.
No, certainly not. And it's more in the protecting her interests vein. But she does, at the end, she is very, you can tell she's quite a bit off the rails there.
She's Gollum nuts.
Yeah.
My precious.
Yeah.
She's that kind of. This sounded bad. I totally thought she was in on it. I knew she was the bad guy.
I suspected early on.
But my reasoning for thinking that was because I kept waiting for the Bond plot. Because I'm reading this going, well, this is A View to a Kill. This is the horse racing with Christopher Walken. And they've got a diode or something in the jockey's crop that they're going to trigger, and the horse is going to win the race. And then the horse won the race. And I went, yeah, I got this all figured out. And so the brig goes in and starts investigating. I'm like, this is just like the Bond scene. He's in there and he's in the stables, and he's gonna find the secret lab and everything. And no, he finds a unicorn. And my whole brain went.
How ridiculous does that sound when you describe that? And it was, there was no ridiculousness about this story until you just said that. And now I think, wow, yeah.
I had to back up and reread it and go, oh, okay, we're not doing the story I thought we were doing, which is fine. I mean, unicorn. Yeah, why not?
I sort of suspected there must have been something along that lines when they were talking about the cattle mutilation or the animal mutilation, the scream that they couldn't quite identify what creature.
Well, and they kept using the word gored.
Yeah, gored.
They were gored, and I went, well, that would be like a bull's horns.
Yeah.
But it can't be a bull. And I would dismiss it, and I went back to the Bond plot. And then unicorn, and all of a sudden, all the pieces went click, 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 click. Oh. So, not that was, well done on you, sir, or madam, for fooling me, because I totally bit the wrong, I bet on the wrong horse, is what happened to this. So when we got to the unicorn, then I had to kind of rewrap my brain around the story and went, okay. And while there was a part of me that was going, really? A unicorn? But it's like, no, this is a Lethbridge-Stewart book. All bets are off. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
So,
and one of the things I went into it when it was revealed to a unicorn, my mind immediately went to a book that I'm unfortunately have put down. I was been in the middle of Cat's Cradle, Witch's Mark, which is one of the new adventures, deals with unicorns and mythical creatures, and actually a separate realm that the Doctor and Ace end up stumbling across, kind of like another dimension type thing that's bleeding through to our reality. And immediately I was like, oh, are we going to tie this to this? And they don't, but because they don't, that leaves it open to, well, I know where the unicorn came from, which I thought was kind of cool, kind of clever, but because they don't really explain where the unicorn came from.
No, and they don't. I don't remember them really describing the unicorn in too much detail.
No,
am I remembering
they
that
didn't.
wrong?
But I thought it's.
But I got the impression that it wasn't like the standard
white. It's not, because
the white unicorn that you.
It was not a
Mel loves.
It was not a glory unicorn. It was definitely a whoa.
When it's
unicorn.
said to be in a large steel box with chains, I imagine something much larger than the fantasy unicorns that we imagine in fantasy.
It's like if you crossbred a Velociraptor and a Clydesdale. That's
yeah.
With a horn.
With a horn. And a narwhal. No, they kind of, in her backstory, when she talks about there was the noise in the forest or something. So they kind of sort of give that illusion that, well, maybe it's alien.
Right.
I definitely got that impression.
But they don't really go there. They don't really rule out that it's terrestrial.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And of course, in my headcanon, since I've already written a fanfic where the Doctor rescued all the unicorns from Earth in the past, it's just one he missed. I've already retconned that.
There you go.
But
That's canon now.
yeah, it's official. But no, I kind of go back. I agree that the quick wrap up is really the only way you could have gone with it. But I still felt it felt a little truncated, that it was just kind of like for boom, 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 and then all of a sudden, bam, and we were done. And it was like, oh. And I've mulled this one over a little bit, and it's like, I don't know how you could end it differently.
I think
really
what works for this one is that the husband basically is the hero in this, because he stumbles across Lethbridge-Stewart almost being killed by the henchman guy, and ends up clocking the guy, and then they go back to the house because he thinks that the Brigadier, if she discovers the henchman knocked out, she's going to assume he went to the police. So they wisely go back to the house, and so to me that was the resolution. That there was what wraps the plot up, is the fact that he rescues the Brigadier from certain death. And so
that's kind of the climax. And the rest of it's
so the rest of it is just cleanup. So that to me, that's why I don't feel like
I think it helps
ended abruptly.
Also, that it's all at the same setting, whereas the last one, for the very end, we go to a new location.
The third act, you really feel like
which
should
is
have gone out longer.
Yes, exactly.
Agreed.
I think that's the major difference.
I would agree.
I'll buy that.
It's it's this one. This was probably one of my favorites in the whole book.
I would agree with that.
I quite enjoyed this.
It was really good.
A lot. All right, the next one, Keith.
The Great Magician and the Spirits of the Vasty Deep by Gareth Madwick. This is set shortly after the novella, The Flaming Soldier.
Yeah. So good thing we got the Flaming Soldier in, because now we know where our placement is. I do want to, before we get started here, I do want to thank Gareth for sending us a pronouncer. Andy gave him a heads up that we often struggle with the Welsh, which I think a lot of people probably do, to be fair. I mean, come on. But he did send us a pronouncer, and so I sent him an email thanking him and hoping that he would listen to the review. And so I'd like to say again, thank you, Gareth, for sending us the pronouncer, because for me it did. I had it open next to this, and it did help me. Occasionally, I would look at a name so many times that I realized I'm never going to get that, and just keep doing it in my head what I had. But there were certain occasions where I picked up on what that Welsh word was, or that pronunciation anyway was, of those names, and would continue it in my head as I read it. So it was very helpful.
See, I got the pronouncer after I had finished reading it. So Welsh is just like any other sci-fi word for me.
It just kind of, it becomes a word on a page instead of something in your head.
Oh, that's that. Okay. Word association.
I treated it very much like a study guide that the teacher would hand out in class. While I was very appreciative of the effort, I didn't use it. So I stumbled through blindly and then kicked myself afterwards going, man, I should have had that handy.
Before we start actually butchering any of these pronunciations, he also has a disclaimer saying that he's no linguist and he's not fluent. He just grew up there and got reasonable grade in his second language GCSE Welsh 15 years ago. So he might be a little rusty.
Purists might disagree with some of his pronunciations.
Yes.
But it was still mountains above what
way better than
in my book, you're an expert.
He got a reasonable grade.
Yeah.
I just say, Gareth, close enough. Of course, that's usually how I rank myself whenever I read this. I go, close enough.
This was probably my second favorite story of the set.
I probably fall down on that too. The last one's a very close one, but yeah.
Mainly because Evans.
Yes.
And who doesn't love Evans?
And
new and improved Evans.
And Samson.
Evans.
Evan and Samson together. That
again.
was great.
And not just the interplay, but this wonderful odd couple dynamic that has developed between the two of them, and the very simple, straightforward way that Evans responds and looks at the world, And Samson almost has to keep reminding himself of this kind of stuff. And it's right up at the beginning. He says, "Oh, I thought you, or how'd you get lost driving your own country?" "Oh, out of practice, aren't I?" "Oh, yeah, we have taken you off driving duty." Whose fault is that? "I thought you understood the language." "Well, I'm out of practice, aren't I?" Just one after another with those kinds of things that he had to keep reminding himself. And so I had this stupid grin on my face through most of the story. Even stumbling over the pronunciations in my head, which has, sci-fi word here. And getting to the moment where they've been transported, I'm going to skip to the end. Getting to the moment where they've been transported back in time, and they're locked up, and they're like, okay, what do we do? And Samson convinces Evans that we've got to stop this. We can't just let it go. And Evans makes that connection that, oh, yeah, this could be bad. We absolutely have to do it. Okay, how do we get out? Well, how about the sick prisoner trick? And Evans, Samson said, well, they're never going to fall for that. It's the oldest trick in the book. Yeah, not yet.
Not yet.
I literally laughed out loud and had to explain it to Mel. She was like, "What are you doing? What's going on?" So I had to explain the joke to her, and she thought it was funny. That to me was just the crystallizing. Yeah, I really don't care if they get out of it now. This is perfect. So that just you tickled my funny bone, and you made me happy, and I was pleased as punch.
I think the hardest thing to follow along for me, and probably because I don't know the history of this time period that they go back to, is I'm intrigued to learn more about what was the king's name?
I'm not going to pronounce it.
Which one was it? Was that Owain? No, that was.
I believe it was.
Okay,
I think so.
Owain, yeah, that's right, because they kept saying Glendower. Owain Glendower. I don't know much about that.
I know nothing.
Prince or king or whatever he was. Prince of Wales. But it did intrigue me to go back and find out about this and how he was kind of, I think I get the impression he was a stranger in his own land. He had become prince because of his efforts to help the Welsh people, and that the French king basically hung him out to dry, and he was assimilated into, or the kingdom was assimilated into British rule, was the impression I got. And he felt that he needed to lead his people out under the thumb of the crown, but which was really intriguing to me. So much so to the fact that in the 1970s we have some rebels or whatever, I don't know what you would call them, a group that wants to return him to their time because they think he has a better chance. I don't know why
Welsh Renaissance.
I don't know why you think that, but yeah, think that he has a better chance of influencing the Welsh nationalists and to try to take their country or their land back, their country back, which seemed a little bit far fetched to me, but I guess it kind of works.
Yeah, it's a bit out there of an idea.
It
but
is.
It's a neat idea.
It is a neat idea
that we haven't gotten previously.
That's just it. The concept of this and the fact that it involved the time travel element of it, I thought was really cool. It was really intriguing that these three guys go back in time, inadvertently pulling Samson and Evan back in time with them, and Evan really, Evan's certainly being kind of the hero in this as well, which I thought was neat.
I thought it was really well written too.
It was.
Not having pronouncers, I was able to keep all the characters straight and figure out who was who without knowing how to say their names.
Absolutely.
So
maybe the uniqueness of the names helps too.
I think
puts
that
it
could,
in your
but
head.
they vary the names so much that you can really help keep track of what's going on.
Yeah.
That, and I appreciate that, again, with Evan's pragmatic practicalism, that, time travel, okay. And that we didn't have to get a big, and not that there would have necessarily been room for it in a short story, but just that, he accepted it and moved on. Is this too low? Suddenly realized I feel like I'm talking into my navel.
Oh, you're right.
But he just, after all the things I've seen with this outfit, that this is this. I agree with you. I feel like I wanted to know more about this because, and I'm probably way off base, so if anybody's from the area or the author, I apologize. The closest analogy that my brain made is if a current day group of Scots went back and tried to bring William Wallace into the future.
That's kind of the impression I took out from it,
and I'm sure that's not how this worked, but okay, that's the closest that I can make that correlation. So,
as for people who don't know the history, the story does a good enough job helping you kind of get that impression that it can relate to something that you are familiar with.
Well, and just to find, like when we did Wrath of the Iceni, where we and all of a sudden found out later that, oh, this is a real person.
Right.
That flabbergasted me. This story, I feel like, okay, this is obviously a real thing. I need to look into this more because I'm intrigued. I want to know more about.
It does something that Doctor Who set out to do in the very beginning, and that was to educate people and the youth, and I think more importantly, make people want to go and learn more about the history that it's utilizing and the vehicle that it's utilizing. So I think it does a good job of that.
Am I remembering it correctly that it also does that cool thing that Doctor Who often does of explaining mysteries, because he still disappears at the end of the story,
Yeah,
which is one of the things I've always appreciated when Doctor Who does.
Although I thought because he disappears at the end of the story that he was going to actually come back through to.
Oh yeah, I did too.
to our time. No, this is even before us, but to present day.
Time.
Yeah. That I thought that are we actually going to go there with this? But they didn't quite go there. So that was neat.
Which would have been kind of an interesting take on it.
It would have been. Two princes at the same time, because fortuitously for at least our villains, the Prince of Wales is actually visiting this nuclear planet at the same time. Who Evans in turn, I wanted him to get a citation for saving the prince. That was kind of cool. It's funny, we've gone from Evans being this like duncy driver to wanting accommodations to be lavished on the man. That's how much we've grown to love Evans. Very good. Well, nice job. Good job on you, Gareth. You know what? I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong.
Notice how we avoided saying most names in the story?
Yeah, we still did, even though we had the pronouncer guide. What's next, Keith?
48 Crash by Mark Carton. So this was the one that was released as part of the anniversary for BBC Radio, right?
I believe that's right, yeah. Because it heavily ties into BBC One.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going to apologize and have to bow out, because as I was reading the book, the shorts and going in order, I get to this one, and I don't know what it is. I feel like about 3 pages into the story. I have no idea what I read. And it's not through any fault of the author, I don't believe. I would read a page and just there was no comprehension happening. I have no idea what I read. And I probably should have skipped ahead to the last story in the book and finished it off and then tried to come back to this one. But I was doggedly determined, so I kept rereading it and trying to get into it. And I just couldn't make any progress on it. So I don't know what happens. I have not finished this.
My thing is I almost didn't read this one, because in fact that's when I sent the text to you about what was in this, clarifying what we had to read, because originally this was released as a short story on its own that we hadn't reviewed yet, but in the back of my head I had it that we had done this one, and I almost didn't read it, and then I thought, and I sent that text to you asking, are these the ones that we need to do, and you said yes, and I was like, okay, now I got to read this one too. So yeah, I almost missed reading this one myself.
Well, tell me about it.
Well, this one is an interesting story. I like the concept of this from the point of view of there's this basically Woodstock-type event that is getting ready to happen, that's being organized by Radio 1 of some of the biggest... I mean, it's these DJs basically get kind of... This one particular gets their time in the sun at this big music festival thing, but you don't get the impression that the musicians come and sing. They just load up a big PA system and they spin some tunes live in front of an audience, and it's broadcast on the radio. And there is some.
So they did a live remote.
So this is probably what I lost you. Is there's this code breaker guy that gets put in this position of breaking codes, and he goes nuts because suddenly he's like.
He's obsessed.
He's obsessed with, like, it's all in the charts. It's music. It's pointing to something. blah, 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 blah. And when it piques the Brigadier's interest, and so he goes to talk to him and finds out that he's talking about this has happened before. It's been an invasion in the past, 1948, and the Brig still doesn't quite piece it together, so he ends up going to Hamilton and finding out that General Hamilton actually was there in 48 when this first invasion started to happen, and he puts the Brig on it immediately because it sounds like it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
This time, then they were able to kind of thwart the invasion because there were only a few people there, and the Army had no problem because they weren't able to take over this little seaside town. But now that there's this big, giant festival coming, they knew that they were going to be able to take all of these people out and be able to take over this town, which then signals a fleet of ships that's going to come down and start their invasion. So this is like the flagship that comes in, kind of sets things up for the ones to come in.
Pilot fish.
So it's an intriguing story, and I really liked it. Unfortunately, it occasionally takes me out of the story, and I try not to let things like this bug me, but it's a bit anachronistic. The reason being is because distinctly it says it takes place a year after the novel The Man from Yesterday. The Man from Yesterday, if you look at the timeline, takes place in 1970. A year later would be 1971. Now, while he's spinning Slade's record, is it Slade? That group, the UK group, Merry Christmas, everybody having fun. Anyway, they were big in the 70s, but their first song was in 1971, so I was okay with that. But then when he starts spinning Rocket Man, I know for sure that came out in April 72.
Yeah, it's 72.
So then I'm like, whoa, we didn't do our research here. And so, unfortunately, things like that don't bother me that. But what tipped me off to that, I probably wouldn't even have thought of that, is Mark Carton uses some words that I felt were inappropriate from the time. And it happened a few times. But the one that sticks in my head that I can definitely remember is, and while people come, I'm paraphrasing, but people come by and get some shout-outs. Well, shout-out's not a term. That's a 90s term.
Yeah.
A shout-out is a relatively new term. And to use something like that in a book that's purportedly set in 1971, or ish, 71-ish, that threw me off.
71-81.
Yeah. So they're 71-91.
Oh, see? You just fixed part of it.
71-91. But so and I wish I had jotted down the other two just to make this point a little more fluent. But there's some phraseology in this, and it's probably a relatively inexperienced writer that wrote. I don't know. I don't want to pigeonhole. Mark Granton's probably got a huge dossier of stuff, but it felt very anachronistic for this story, and that unfortunately takes me out of it. And then it's hard for me to focus on the true story itself, which it shouldn't, but it did. Overall, conceptually, it's a neat idea. An invasion that starts from the sea, that comes up, creates this giant tsunami in order to take out a bunch of people, and then signaling a fleet of ships ahead. The analogy of the fact that the reason they could connect these two events were similar is because of the weather patterns that were happening in 1948 are similar to what's happening now. And the thunderstorm, these big storms that have been happening, is a great cover for an invading fleet that's going to use a big giant signal beacon in order to bring their ships down further ready. So I thought that was cool. It was clever. There were neat little things. Then it goes a little bit, I don't want to say wonky, but maybe wacky is more of the term, which I enjoyed the ride, because at this point, when the Brigadier goes up and he realizes he has to clear the people from
that's my favorite part of the entire story. Okay,
I'm just saying, the plausibility of this was really weird, but I kind of set it aside going, okay, this is kind of fun.
So much fun that it was just...
He goes up to the DJ who's spinning platters. It's the height of the evening, and he tells him, these people are in danger. You've got to help me get out of here. And so they have this contest every year that they do this thing where people win prizes. And the DJ, clever thinking on his feet, says, get in the cab and drive this away, and I'll lure the people away. And so the DJ decides that his ploy is, okay, we're going to give prizes away to the first 5 people that can get up to me in time. And so the Brigadier takes off, and of course the whole crowd's running after him because they're all trying to get up to him in time. And
he's spinning plates the entire time.
He's playing discs the whole time. So it's hilarious. I mean, it's not even hilarious. It's funny and fun in that aspect. But I did have that side of me going, would this really work? Could you? But yeah,
I didn't even question it.
It
I
was
wasn't along for the
enjoyable
ride at that point.
It was enjoyable, but there were little problems that I had, little niggles I had with it, and that was one of them. Was the fact that every time a certain phrase, I wish I could remember some of it. So every time a certain phraseology would pop out, it took me out of it because I was like, that doesn't sound 1970s to me. So, Keith, what else? I kind of dominated this one for the story that I probably was my least favorite. I dominated most of the conversation here.
I didn't notice those things, and I enjoyed the story. I had a lot of fun while reading it. I didn't have the issue you did, Sean.
Does it come across as like, is it meant to be a farce? Or is it just that it hits a high moment?
It's not farcical.
No,
I'm making
it's not.
It more of
it's just fun.
Yeah, there's so
like
an edge
Lethbridge-Stewart chasing the Christmas star on horseback.
Yeah, that kind of
it's
thing. Yeah,
exactly like that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just
and then
it's
that
on the verge
allows
of wackiness.
the army to do their thing and take care of the threat before it can even start. So it's just one of those large group of people have to get out of the way. And
I think also what I liked about it was even though we had a spur of the moment action in order to get people away from the shore, because
everything else was very thought out leading up to
exactly
that.
the planning for the invasion, to take care of the invasion, was good, because they had anchored themselves down on the shore. I think they had nose plugs and goggles because they knew that there were
the water
possibility of this
take you
tsunami.
over and allow them.
I like the concept of the Brigadier showing up to something that had been predicted to have like 3,000 people, ends up having like 30,000 people. Those numbers aren't right, but that was the implication. And realizing I've got to figure out something quick. We've got to adjust quickly because this is not controllable. We can't manage this many people. Only to have the DJ go, yeah, drive this thing. I've got something.
Well, and the journey to uncover the mystery of the invasion, I really enjoyed too.
That was good too. That was intriguing. And the Brigadier picking up on these things that, hey, this guy might be a point, because he's almost kind of brushed aside by everybody else because they kind of think he's just gone crazy, because this has happened to code breakers before. In fact, they think they had a term for it, that this happens to a handful of people, and so they just kind of assume this has happened to him. But he actually really did see a sequence in the patterns that was going to signal this invasion, and the Brigadier was smart enough to say, maybe I should check this out. So that was kind of cool too.
Yeah,
there's good things about this. Mark, you did a good job. I like this story now. The more I talk about it, the more I like it.
It's just this few anachronisms.
I can let slide now.
Well, the last one in HAVOC Files 4 is The Slow Invasion by Andrew Allen. This story takes place several years after the TV story The Five Doctors.
Yeah. You read this one, right, Sean?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't read this one yet.
I got stuck on...
Oh, that's right. You got stuck on 48.
I got stuck on 48, and I should have skipped ahead.
I got you.
I didn't, so I still have catch-up reading to do. So tell me about this one.
You take over here, Keith, because...
So
let me. Before
I read
he
this
starts,
one, and
I'm already intrigued because it's set after the Five Doctors.
Before he starts this story, can't explain it. I enjoyed it immensely, but I don't think I understand every bit of it. I got confused. It's not that I didn't understand it. I got confused in a lot of places.
Okay. So it takes this really clever, these two stories, and ties them together of Anne and Bishop off doing their own things. And so it kind of starts with these two soldiers are decoys and they get killed, unfortunately, as Bishop is trying to get this, what they call the passenger, to the base to protect it. Meanwhile, Anne goes to see an art showing because
Brendan.
What?
Brendan.
Yeah, Brendan.
The son of her friend that was the baby in Moonblink that they shipped off to live with Sarah Jane's mother. that ends up living with not mother, aunt. Levine. In Man's Best Friend. What's the Canine Company episode? That Brendan supposedly has invited her to an art gallery.
Yeah.
It's just a name drop, but it's a really long name drop. Don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, you really kept thinking, we're going to see him. He's going to show up. We're going to see him. And then he doesn't show up.
Yeah, it's kind of a... But
just enough to establish which Brendan that is.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha. Okay.
And she gets kind of tricked into going to see a painting of her father, which self-heals. So you damage it and it fixes itself. And so the guy, there's kind of mystery of this guy that who's trying to get Anne to look at this painting, and when she does, and he gets her to take him and the painting back to the unit base, where Bishop comes back with his package in tow, which they call the passenger, and it's
this sarcophagus that
yeah.
they can't open, so they don't really know what's on the inside of it, other than it had come out of the sarcophagus once before, between the time that it's aged to today,
which was a really long time.
Yeah, a really long time ago.
And so these people that killed the decoy soldiers are after the sarcophagus, and so they're chasing them all the way back to base. And they get in, and it turns out that the guy with the painting is a member of this tribe and knew that they were going to be intersecting here.
It was all a setup to actually push them towards the base, to get to the base so that he was there to intercept it.
The painting is made out of this alien's blood. And the blood is necessary to revive whatever's in the casket. Or sarcophagus. So that's the big thrust of it, is putting these two things together. And I'm trying to remember how it ended now.
I'll tell you, in the circus tent with the illustrated man illusion, where that's where I got lost.
They kind of wind up trapping the blood elsewhere, but I don't remember
Well,
how.
it's because she had the hydrogen peroxide.
Yes, that's right.
That was, I think she had splashed him with it at one point, but she was also holding the rest of the ink at bay. I say ink because the guy, when it takes over him, what happened was,
it's a hard story to explain.
It
makes sense when you read it.
Here's why Keith just explained it eloquently, the summary of the plot of the summary of the story. He did a good job. What's really intriguing and cool about this story is how it's all played. We get a huge chunk of setup, which is just fascinating, of these two guys that are the decoys.
Yeah,
and when they stop on the road, you don't know that they're decoys. And when they stop on the road, the guys come out and they shoot the one guy immediately, and they're basically telling this other guy that open up this van, and he's like, I can't do that, and they say, no, you open this van. So I think they ended up shooting him. And he's dying. He's on the ground, realizing what's going on, and understand. They blow the back of the van open, and there's nothing there. And then they come back around and say, "Where is it? Where is it?" He's laughing because he knows, hey, we're the decoy, and he has to tell these guys that. So there's this beautiful little story of this guy that you really kind of get to like, and you feel bad for, because this is it. He's dead. He's going to die. And so it's this really intriguing setup.
And then you move on to the rest of the story.
And you move to Anne, who's at this gallery through the invitation, and then they move back to Bishop, who has now shown up on the scene where these decoys are dead, and they're bringing in a helicopter in order to take because they realize that, okay, there is going to be an ambush. We need to be on top of this, or we'll take it by air as an added protection, and ends up taking it. The really cool thing about it is, this guy that's trying to get Anne to come look at the painting. First of all, she doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to be there after she realizes she's been duped and that Brendan's not really there. And she talks to this guy, but he very cleverly says, well, you have to come back and see it now or never, because I have to leave for America by 11 o'clock. And she says, well, she begrudgingly ends up going. She takes one of the fifth with her as protection. She goes. When she sees it now, suddenly she's even more intrigued, because not only is it a picture of her father, and very much so in the, and that's another thing I thought was really cool. They talk about how there's only 5 paintings of Professor Travers, and none of them capture his essence, but this one does. In fact, she says he never liked any of the other pictures, but she knows if he had seen this one, he would have liked it, because it does capture the essence of him. And then only to do the whole intriguing thing where, he first of all, he goes up and he rubs a
little bit of
turpentine on the painting, and she's like, "Well, what are you doing? Don't ruin it." It goes back together. Then he throws turpentine at it, and it runs down almost off of the canvas, and then comes back on. It's really written very, very well, and it's very visual. Anyway, she finally says, well, I need to take this back and do some tests on it to find out what this ink or paint is. And he says, I can't do that. I can't let it out of my sight. And she's so intrigued by it that she knows she's not supposed to let this guy in, but he convinces her that, well, if you got to,
he plays on all those things. He
plays on everything. If you've got an armed guard on me, obviously I'm not going to see anything. And so talks him into talks her into taking him back into this where she is running these tests, and that's where she discovers that it's actually blood. It's sentient blood of some sort. All the while, the bishop's crew have been waylaid,
by these.
and they're and I love the fact that once they get it to the base, they realize, there's a guy with a dead-on bead on Bishop, and he knows that this is it, this is the end. The guy misses him, and so he manages to get into the base, and he realizes, wait a minute, it's almost like they're leading us into a trap because that guy had me dead to rights. I should be dead right now, but he missed, and so Bishop's starting to catch on. The blast doors are going down in the room that Anne and the old man are in, because the base is under siege, and he pushes the sarcophagus to the door and traps the door from going down and tells Anne, you guys got to help me get in here because this is what they're after. And she, even, protocols dictate, no, this is a safe room. You can't be in here. She just jumps into
action.
Yeah, and so finally he convinces her, I have to be on the other side of that door. So they actually get in there, which is even worse now because now it's where this guy has wanted it to be all along. I mean, it's just really, really cleverly done. It really is. It paces so nicely. So the guy finally reveals, after they're locked into this room with just him, so it's just Anne Bishop and this guy, they realize that, they've been duped, and he's like, the paint from the picture is now going down off the canvas on the table and is starting to reanimate the sarcophagus. He opens it with a ring that he's wearing, which was very cleverly telegraphed to us because she remarks about the ring early on in the story when she meets him. He opens his sarcophagus with this ring, and this paint blood substance starts to reanimate these bones in this thing of this alien. And they talk about this, first the bones and then the muscles grafting. It's so well done. Anyway, so you think, this is it. It's going to be revived. Well, Bishop just takes and blasts the thing so that it can't revive this thing. Just boom, and you think, that fixes it. No, it comes back off, and then it starts to overtake Anne and Bishop. And then you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And then they wake up later, and the guy's gone. And they realize what has happened is the blood took him over because it needed a vehicle to get out. And then he ends up at a circus. It's a circus that's nearby. In fact, they tell you about this.
They referenced it earlier.
Yeah, there was a ringmaster that was standing outside trying to beckon people into the circus. Well, that's where he ends up because I think that this sentient blood alien being thing that's taken him over now realizes that now it doesn't have a host, so it's got to spread. And so they realize that that's where that's where it goes a little off the rails for me, and I got a little confused with what was happening. But she comes running in with it wasn't tryptophan, it's a hydrogen peroxide, obviously, because it's blood. Now she knows what to use to deal with it. And they end up separating it from him, but with no host in order to continue on. So they end up saving the day that way. But while all of this is so eloquently written, the very end of this, the last act of this, confused me a bit on what was happening. And so that was, for me, the weakest point. Even though I think it wrapped up nicely, it really kind of felt like we got to a certain point and didn't quite know what to do with it, so it gets a little random at the end. But overall, it's a terrific story. And I've completely told you the entire thing and ruined it completely.
No,
you don't have to read it now.
I'm really
it's really an intriguing. So that's why
I thought I wasn't intrigued before.
That's why we were talking about earlier. I said it's really maybe you were saying this was the Magician one was your second favorite, maybe. This might be my second favorite. I haven't decided. If it wasn't for the confusion in the end of what was happening,
what's also great is it leaves things ambiguous.
It does. It leaves it very ambiguous.
It leaves it in a way where you get the impression that the blood exists now on a circus tent flap.
It does, because the blood ends up on the
and as
canvas
a painting of the guy.
It's almost, what's the guy's name at the end of Ghostbusters 2, where it's living as this giant canvas. Vigo. It almost it's like the image of Vigo, but it's the guy. It's the old man that it's the image of that at the end. So Yeah, that was a bit, again, like the ending I think could have been a little more tidy than it was, but overall it's just such a good read and such
really
an intriguing
is.
story. It really, of the course of the book, that really, the end, it really felt like an end story in this, kind of a big, giant, climactic thing. So,
But it's not.
nope.
Because then we get the two Brigadiers.
Which I realized after, because we have read the two Brigadiers. I realized when I got to the end of this, I was like, oh, the two Brigadiers. Why would this be right here at the end? This was one of those stories that I thought got a little bit corny. Then I realized because that story, the Slow Invasion, is grim and there's a lot of heavy moments in it. The two Brigadiers does kind of like the book to end on, which I thought was good.
If you
Good
noticed,
idea.
also, the book is in chronological order.
Oh, it is, yeah.
So
right.
because
I hadn't
the
thought
two
of that.
Brigadiers is after Battlefield.
Right.
This one was before the five or after the Five Doctors.
Right.
So I mean, it's kind of dun 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 in
Right.
order. So it makes sense too in that aspect.
Right.
I'm still smarting over the idea that the two Brigadiers wasn't what I thought it was going to be. You can't give me that title and not give me... Yeah.
You got two Brigadiers.
I
Yeah,
know.
two Brigadiers.
I know.
The next Doctor wasn't what you thought would be either.
No, it wasn't. And I enjoyed it all the same. But
Clever
there's
in
still
setup.
still a part of me going, oh, you fooled me with the title.
Clever in setup. Overall, I really enjoyed HAVOC Files 4. I thought it was wonderfully done, wonderfully constructive. There's not a bad story in it.
No, there really
I have
isn't.
some issues with some, but overall, another great set of short stories compiled
It's,
together for the end of the
definitely
end
agree
of the
with that.
season. Or beginning of the next, whichever way you look
Yeah.
at it. Always thinking this is the end of the last, but I guess it's technically the beginning of the next.
And a good end to the HAVOC Files line.
Yeah.
If indeed this is the last of the last.
Yes. They say it is, but you never know.
All right, then we had two little special shorts.
Yeah, they released a short story for Boxing Day called What's Past is Prologue.
I like that we now have a Christmas special, a Boxing Day special,
And
then
a
we'll
New
do a New
Year's.
Year's Day special. So this is a lot of fun.
Yeah. So What's Past is Prologue explores a familial connection to Alistair in a roundabout way that you have to really kind of focus on to pay attention of who they're talking about and what's going on. What do you guys think of this one?
I like this because it goes way back. In fact, it took me a second. I had to remember back that I had read that it was set in 1917, I think it was.
They're talking about the Great War.
Yeah, and I had to figure out how, and the talking about the incursions with the Russians, and it took me a little while to go, oh, wait a minute, this isn't even like young Lethbridge-Stewart. This is like even pre-Lethbridge-Stewart.
They're talking about Gordon and
Right, and so this is Gordon and his brother Matthew, and they're it's basically an outing with their dad on Christmas Day into town. And Gordon, it really explores Gordon's pursuit, for the most part, of wanting to get into the war even though he's too young. He ends up going to the military office in order to sign up and gets arrested because he's breaking the rules of trying to get in too soon. It's a real subtle little story, but what it does at the end is it sets up the connection of Archibald, who we just saw in the Twice Upon a Time Christmas special this year, which shares some lineage with Lethbridge-Stewart. The Christmas special implies in more ways than one that Archibald is a direct line, like a grandfather or something.
some sort of ancestor.
I think the Heisman estate decided and had already created a grandfather for Lethbridge-Stewart, and unfortunately that didn't work intellectual property wise. Doesn't work in the way that
Doesn't jive.
doesn't jive. And so cleverly they did agree with a compromise, and David McIntee wrote this short story in order to introduce us to Archibald, who is the great uncle of Lethbridge-Stewart. only to which, and it's a neat little story. It's encompassed.
It's
in only
okay.
about,
I wasn't.
It's
too
about a half a dozen pages. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
not a
short.
lot happens.
The only
It's
for me-
character building for the ancestry
it's
of
setting up
Lethbridge-Stewart.
who Archibald is, because
Yeah.
there's references to him and talking to him, and that's really all that the story serves its purpose
Right.
for. And at doing that, it does a fine job.
And Uncle Archie's coming for Christmas. We know
Yeah.
that, and he shows up at the end.
It's pretty much the thrust of the story and a little bit of backstory for Gordon. But other than that, I wasn't that wowed by this story.
And The Past is Prelude is a clever title for a story in and itself. But when you realize that the following week, Andy Wright has a story that comes out called The Note, you realize that it's a twofold title, that this is almost a prelude to...
Yes, in combination with the note,
prologue.
it improves the story.
Yeah, it does. It really does. But I quite enjoyed it. It was a neat little look back into the history of Lethbridge-Stewart, and I quite liked that, especially the determination that Gordon has that he's ready to serve king and country, and I thought that was kind of a neat statement on him and how
It helps show why the brig is also very military minded. And
you could say that until you realize in the story we're going to read
it's true.
and even in Forgotten Son, it's alluded to that wasn't his first. As a
That
young
wasn't
man,
his,
that was
yeah.
not his first passion.
But you can see it's ingrained
You
in
can
him.
see, that it's
Yeah.
in his blood. It
Yes,
really is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sean?
I liked the fact that it was a simple story, that this just outing at Christmas. And I liked the fact that of all the places, we went and checked the girlfriend's house. We went and checked you did the rounds, and he wasn't in these places. And finally, we called the police station and hoped that what he's there. So why would he be at the police station? And for the silliest of reasons, really. I mean, I went to enlist. What? On Christmas Day? Just sure.
It was Boxing Day. It was the day after.
The day
It was
after, pardon me.
Boxing Day, yeah.
So it was like, wow, okay. The explaining away the who Archibald is, which really it's almost a two-parter. It really, I think you almost need the note.
You do, and I think that's why I think it was cleverly done that we got a little piece ahead of the kind of the piece de resistance. No, but the bigger piece that comes later.
Right.
Yeah.
This one is kind of the story, and then the second one is the info dump. That you put the two of them together, and all of a sudden you have kind of a complete.
It makes a nice little companion piece.
Yeah, exactly. The explaining away of Archibald, I felt, was cleverly done, and
actually, it's not even explaining away. It's introducing. It's
Well, okay.
introducing the character, I think, to the, as we've affectionately called it, the Brig verse or the extended unit verse, as I like better. But yeah, I think it introduces Archie to the universe relatively well, even though I believe Archibald is mentioned even earlier on in The Forgotten Son. Because I came across something that referenced me back to that, and it jogged my memory that the character was mentioned, and I think that's where they came down to
I think there was an Archibald
yes.
Lethbridge-Stewart, but that's not necessarily.
Well, it wasn't the fleshed out character.
Yes.
It is a name drop. Yes, yeah.
Having said that, it makes me feel a little bit better about how it was handled in the Christmas special, because I don't feel. When he said he was a Lethbridge-Stewart, I kind of groaned a little bit inwardly, because it just felt like, this is just a fan service name drop. There's really no reason for him to be related at all, from the standpoint of the Great War being about the unknown soldier.
Right.
I felt that was a much
could have
stronger
been any
connection.
soldier.
Yeah,
it could have
really
been any
could have
soldier,
been.
and I felt it was stronger to do that. And I felt, especially from the standpoint that the First Doctor doesn't know Lethbridge-Stewart, that's a meaningless name to him, that it just didn't have that connection for me. So they went there, they did that. It was like, okay. Then for Andy and David to turn around and take that and go, okay, well, if you're gonna do that, we're gonna run with it, and we're going to almost reappropriate this character,
which
and fold him back into the universe in such a way that, as you said, it's an introduction that we're getting, and bending. I don't know. It's almost bending Doctor Who to fit the Brigverse.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
And it works beautifully. And it made me feel better about how the Christmas special came off.
Because it doesn't feel like bending the Lethbridge-Stewart universe to fit Doctor Who. It feels like bending Doctor Who universe to fit Lethbridge-Stewart. And
exactly.
I think that works. I think they cleverly did that. I would agree with you 100%.
Yeah, that made me very, very happy for that. So, as Keith said, there's really nothing that happens in it. I liked the story better than some of the other Christmas ones, like the Christmas Fairy one. So I liked this one for that element of it. I'm still having difficulty in my head keeping track of the Lethbridge-Stewart family tree.
It's difficult. I do sometimes have to allude to the handy little thing that's on the website in order to figure some characters out. And then up until recently, they weren't all on there.
They're all the same.
Yeah.
Well, and there have been, because we've gotten 2 Connells now, because there was one in the past, and then the grandson.
The grandson.
And there are...
Or is that the son? Is Connell the son or the grandson?
Connell's
Alistair's
grandson.
Son.
Is it
no,
son?
grandson.
Yeah, no, it's grandson.
Because Lucy is his granddaughter, and Connell is her brother.
Okay.
From a previous marriage.
Right. Okay.
Right. And then there have been 2 Alistairs. There's the Brig Alistair and then the previous Alistair.
Grandpa.
And there's...
Let's stop where we're at, because Andy's going to send us a lengthy email of, you guys really screwed this up, so no. We'll stop it right there. When we read these stories, we try to keep the people straight.
No,
Andy has done a nice job now on the website.
And I mean, no disrespect to them, because there's a
there.
great
There
little
is,
guide
yeah.
up there. But as I'm reading, I still have trouble, especially when we're doing a time jump where we just finished this whole book that was in order, and then I went and read this, and it was like, okay, well, this one's set here, and this one's set here, because they're 2 halves of the same whole, even though there's a whole... the entirety of the Brigverse feels like it's set between them in a way. So it's like, okay. But other than that, no, I like these stories a lot.
Yes.
I thought both of these were very good.
I like the note a lot.
It was nice lineages. That being said, let's move into the note, because that kind of had these... That's written in such a way, I had these revelations, and I was like, what? This was like... And I'm going to say this...
I kind of spoiled that.
I'm going to say this because I don't think it's... I'm not saying this in a way that sometimes you imply soap opera is derogatory of something. It has a soap opera element to it.
Oh, yeah, it totally
that
does.
Really works. That is really good and very intriguing. And the way that it's delivered, and the fact that it's all related back in this note, that Alistair Lethbridge-Stewart's father learned of the fact that he is actually Archibald's son and not Gordon's son, which I thought was... Am I getting that right?
No, not Alistair's son.
Yeah, Gordon, sorry.
Gordon finds out that he's Archibald's son.
Gordon finds out that he's Archibald's son. Yes, that his son is actually Archibald's son. Thank you. Not James. Oh, gosh, now I'm going to... Here we go, tripping up with the names. Yeah. The Briggs' dad had learned that Uncle Archie was actually his dad and not his actual... Well, his...
No, not his uncle.
Not his uncle.
And
anyway, it's cleverly done. And it also harkens back to, if you look back on Twice Upon a Time, it does nicely bend things so that you can either look at it from the... Yes, you're right. The unknown soldier is an element of the story and could have been just left at that. But it does give that one little nice little... Oh, wow, he really did save the lineage of Lethbridge-Stewart, because even though unbeknownst to most people, he's Uncle Archie, unbeknownst to a lot of people, he's actually Lethbridge-Stewart's great-grandfather, which I think really worked. And like you said, it bends Doctor Who to work with the
It'd be just grandfather, wouldn't it?
Yeah, his grandfather, yes.
Grandfather.
Yeah, grandfather. I said great, but yeah, grandfather.
I'm sure he was a great grandfather, but,
But yeah, no. So, but the note, Andy continues to just wow me with his writing because for what sets up to be. I mean, this is just on the heels of the father dying, or the getting
MIA,
he's gone MIA, and also the fact that Mary's now having to deal with the loss of a husband, and just years before that they had buried. Well, a few years before that, they had just buried James when he had died. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, this note is written very near to the fact that when his father had buried James, and relaying this to his father through the note that he knows. Then, and the question is, do we let Alistair know that the grandfather thinking? Right. Alistair, the grandfather, do we let young Alistair know, that this is and he leaves it open as to whether that was ever told to him.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, when the intelligence takes away most of his memories of his past life anyway, that could have been taken away as well, because Mary, his mother, would have remembered, didn't remember James. That was taken away. Perhaps even maybe some of that information is taken away, and he even
because it's almost like his entire time at Bordeaux is lost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he would remember his non-biological father or grandfather as his
uncle,
as his uncle,
great uncle. Yeah.
So he would have known remembered his bio. This gets really complicated. It's not really this difficult, especially when you read these.
No, it's not. They do a good job laying it out.
It really sets up some intriguing ideas of how things, play out later down the road.
What's great about the note is it lets everyone have their cake and eat it too.
It does.
Yeah. If you want him to be the uncle, he's still the uncle, but he can also be the grandfather too.
Yep.
And that's the best thing about it, is that it takes what could have been a travesty.
Oh yeah.
And bends it in. Molds it into such a thing that it is a definite plus. Because, like I said, in my mind, it's not so much. It's yes, we're bending Doctor Who to fit this book series, which I'm sure the purists are going, well, that's not how that works, because Doctor Who is canon and everything else is secondary. But in a way, it's taking this immense body of work that I've enjoyed so much, and it's lending its credence to this moment in Doctor Who.
Right.
So that it's not
contradictory.
It's not contradictory.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be contradictory.
It becomes one of those, the Eighth Doctor said so-and-so's name, and so now all the Big Finish companions are canon.
Right.
It becomes that kind of...
It becomes that connection.
That connection that's like,
Especially with the line in this about how he told people once he had 2 kids, because they didn't know that he could only mention one.
Right.
So yeah, it works on that level for me.
Yeah.
It's very cool. I quite enjoyed this. It was I read it last night on my dinner break, and I went back, and after I got done with it, I thought, wow, that was neat. That was just really, really clever to be able to get that little connection now. I love it. Good on you, Andy. I know you're listening.
Fantastic.
All right, Sean, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, coming up on the schedule, new year, new stuff for us to review. There's not much, at least on the classic series, but we have a few episodes left, and we're going to do one of them next week. We are going to take a look at the last Sarah Jane Smith that we have yet to go, which is Planet of Evil. And it's one that, I'll be honest, I don't know that I remember it. So it'll be new to me, too.
I'm going to go on a limb that there's a planet and that it's evil.
Maybe.
If it's
no guarantees,
if it's as on point as Creature from the Pit, yes.
I don't think anything can be as on point as Creature from the Pit.
I'm going to laugh myself silly if they land. Where are we? We call it the planet.
What is that thing? We call it evil.
And that's now been completely derailed. So yeah, Planet of Evil is our next week's review. I have a little bit more of the schedule put together, but it's not quite ready for prime time, so I'll just leave you with that, and then it'll be posted soon.
Excellent.
Cool. Keith, where can people locate us? Where can people find us if they want to send feedback? I can't talk.
I'm located on the couch.
Just go to our website, travelingthevortex.com, and you can fill out the Send Us Feedback tab, or you can send it directly to feedback@travelingthevortex.com. 1 L, right?
Yep.
1 L. The American spelling. Traveling. Or find us on social media.
I have it on good authority, though, that the 2 L's is where we separate the men from the boys.
I remember that. That was a long time ago. And if you want to help support this podcast, you can find a link to Patreon, and all of that money that goes into Patreon comes right back into this podcast. We appreciate every bit of it, and we appreciate those already supporting us. If that's going to do it for this week, until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.